Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I'm with Adam Kovacs. He is a former martial arts athlete. He's going to tell you all about his martial arts history and how he's helping martial arts brands and fight promotions and fighters better market themselves in the community. So he'll get all into that today. But Adam, instead of me giving like a fumbled intro, tell us a little bit about your martial arts background. I know you have some like world championships, and then also like what you're doing now.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, Matthew. I was born and raised in Hungary, Budapest, and started my martial arts journey when I was 9. But first, I actually started when I was 7, and that was a soft start because my father took me to a small karate gym, and after about 20 seconds, I ran out crying that this is not for me. People are shouting here, they are beating each other up, and this is definitely not for me. And 2 years later, I had a bad experience while I was commuting to school because I was already going there by myself. And I said, I want to be able to protect myself.
Wait, what was the bad experience?
I mean, I was walking towards the end of the trolley, and there was somebody who was very inappropriate, not with me, but like by himself, trying to enjoy himself. And I was like, okay, I'm not, if something like this happens, then I want to be able to protect myself. And I just didn't feel safe. So I went to my parents and I said, like, I wanna go and try it again. And we had a good friend who was already in a karate school back in Hungary, and they said, like, okay, let's give it a try. And then they took me there when I was 9 years old. And so I went to this gym, and these kids were playing with a ball. And I said, like, okay, cool, this is karate, where they play all the time. And I stayed there, and after like 20 minutes, we started the class. But the whole environment and the people and the coach, the sensei, was so friendly that I felt immediately at home, and stayed there for a while. So I started karate when I was 9 at 89, and then when I was 16, I got into the Hungarian national team in kumite sparring, and I competed with the national team until I retired at 32, and became the most successful karate fighter of Hungary by winning the junior world championships first, and then medaling and being at the podium of the WKF karate world championships 3 times. Twice I got silver medal, once bronze. And in 2009 I won the World Games, which is the Olympics for the non-Olympic sports, because back in the days karate was not an Olympic sport. And so I won that in Taiwan. And then in 2013 I retired from fighting karate on an international level. And that's when I started my businesses and everything surrounding fighting and full contact sports. And also that was in 2011 I started my BJJ journey, which I still do. I don't practice karate as much as before, but still trying to be in the journey of a martial artist.
Cool. So then, what is karate popular in Hungary?
I mean, I think karate is popular everywhere, but it's different than back in the days in the 70s, 80s, when it was super popular and among adults. You know, it transitioned to more of being a kid sport, and definitely there's a niche where people go to these big tournaments and they fight. But then after, when these guys got 18, then they have to decide if they want to make a living or they want to still explore being a karate fighter. And there was not many opportunities there to turn a pro or to make a living out of competing in karate.
So what did your parents say about that when you're like, okay, I'm gonna do these junior level, competitions and then pro? Like, what were they thinking?
I mean, they supported me for sure, but I always got the question of like, okay, how are you gonna make a living out of this? You should focus more on your studies and maybe get a normal job and things along those lines. And I was not really interested in their opinion in that way. I did respect their opinion, but I kind of knew that that's the direction I want to head, and prove them wrong.
Yeah,
Where it's
okay.
like, okay, they said like you're not gonna make a living out of it, but I like to prove people wrong. And people said, nobody's going to be able to be one of the best in the world in karate, and this is specifically to the Olympic karate, which is the highest level of the non-full contact karate. And it did really motivate me to prove them wrong. When my parents said I won't be able to make a living out of it, then I said, let me show you how I'm gonna do
Yeah.
it. And so I don't know, it's part of my personality, maybe, that when people tell me that I cannot do certain things, then I just go ahead and do it.
Yeah, okay. So what about like your friends or like dating? Like you're telling them like, you're in your mid 20s and you're still fighting when they all have like normal jobs or careers at that point. How did you manage that? Talking about your friends and navigating that, like dating and all that.
That's a great question. I think when you have a goal, then again you do respect those opinions, but you don't necessarily want it to get you off the road. And I had a bunch of friends who had similar goals, people I trained together with. I have a big circuit of, not a big circuit, but a very close circuit of friends who I was friends with when I was 12, 15, and I still have these guys in my life these days because we always understood what's important for the other person. So I think in my life, also similar in my relationship with my wife, they always knew what they are getting into with that, and I still tried my best to put focus on them as well, or get for them to get the attention what they deserve. But for sure, when you're focusing on becoming a world champion or trying to do the best level possible to get there, then sometimes it gets lonely, and sometimes people say like, okay, we never see you, you never drink, or things along those lines. But it's just a part of the process. But again, when you're passionate, when you have the dedication, I don't think that those things bother you, or at least it didn't really bother me because I knew what I wanted. And it still didn't get me to a boring life of like, okay, I'm only focusing on training and nothing else, because we still had our after parties after a big tournament. We still had gatherings with the family and friends when I got back from these travels and fights. So they accepted, and I think acceptance is kind of the secret sauce of any relationship, where it's like you're not trying to change somebody or say like, okay, you shouldn't go training because you should be with me. If it's like a partner saying that, I don't think that's gonna work out long term, or it's gonna be a toxic relationship.
Mm. So do you think karate has changed, maybe like how it's culturally accepted or how people view it since when you were a fighter to now?
I think so in some ways, and I think one of the reasons is that we created Karate Combat back in the days in 2017, and we wanted to prove a point that karate is not just a kid sport, and it's not just something where like full contact sports and MMA guys just say like, okay, this is just karate, but it needed a platform to show the world, or for people who are interested in fight sports, to see that karate guys are one of the best fighters in the world. They are very well prepared, and you had a few guys like Lyoto Machida and Georges St. Pierre who came from a karate background and represented karate in some ways at the UFC, which was a great platform. But they were almost like the only few of
Yeah, the
the people,
outliers. They're
the
the outliers.
outliers. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it isn't always a process, but it's in a much better spot than it was 10 years ago. So, and I still feel that the very competitive non-contact amateur karate is not getting as much attention as it should, because those fighters and athletes are at the very high level, because what you need, the way you need to train in karate with the precision you need, as I don't know, Conor McGregor said 10 years ago when he was climbing up the top, when speed beats power. I can't really, I'm butchering it, but with karate, you have to be very precise, you have to be very quick, you have to have great eyes. And at the same time, you need to be able to fight for 5 minutes and then go another round. So the physical abilities you need and skills and everything is a full package, what the karate athletes have. And I don't think there's enough platform for them to showcase how good they are.
Is that why are you one of the founders of Karate Combat? I know you're the president at some point. I don't know if you founded it also.
I used to be the CEO and league president, and I'm one of the co-creators of Karate Combat.
Got it. So do you still own a piece of it, or?
So the whole league is now owned through the karate tokens, because it became a crypto-based company, and I do, but I'm not involved in any day-to-day operations with Karate Combat.
That's interesting, because on I think my Google Chrome web browser, it says like Karate Combat something coins, and I always look at it and go, "Is that a mistake? What the heck is that?" I have no idea. Yeah, because I've seen the Karate Combat fights. I think they're cool and they're fun, entertaining on social media and stuff. But like, I never knew what the coins were. So you guys eventually sold it to people who own the coins, so people essentially could buy a share, like a stock.
Yes. So like the coins do work in some ways where if you own some of these coins, then you are essentially like an owner. But it's not like we sold it, but it's more was a transformation from a normal traditional business to a so-called decentralized business. So it was a transition rather than a sell-off or like selling the brand or company. And instead of having like public shares, now you have these coins which are tradable and it's on the exchanges. And then also there is a really cool app where you can find these fights, the upcoming fights, and you can vote on the fighters who you think gonna win. So it's almost like betting. It's not betting, but it's similar, and it's a very cool way to interact with the league and the fights.
So why did they decide to go that crypto route? Were you part of the team when that happened, or was that after you left?
No, I was still part of the team. It's pretty, I mean, with fight sports, it's difficult to make money when it comes to a fight promotion, especially if you're an international brand. Some of these regional leagues and promotions, they have a good business model so that they can make money. But if you want to have international fighters, if you want to put on shows after shows, then you need a bunch of money. So you either go the traditional way where you sell tickets, sell pay-per-views, then try to get really good distribution deals where these distribution partners pay. And then you could go with the merchandising and IP, but it's very hard, very difficult for an up and coming brand. So what we found that pivoting into the crypto world could be a different kind of business model where all these people who are interested in crypto and looking for use cases in the real world and not just digital currency, Karate Combat could be really a good fit. And one of our founders were heavily and deep into the crypto world for 10 plus years. So he had two passions. One was crypto and the other one was Karate Combat. And his dream was just to merge the two in ways where it's very enjoyable for people as well, and also could onboard people from the non-crypto world to the crypto world in a way where they don't even realize it. And that's where, like, for example, when you download the app, it goes on to the blockchain and you get a digital wallet, which you don't even need to know, but you're still using the same system. That's one. And the other thing is that we could attract sponsors and investors who were now interested in the brand, not just because of the fights, but because it was more of a niche sport in a niche industry, which is crypto. So that's why they still say it's the first sport in crypto, which is very much double downing on the whole ecosystem of crypto.
So I guess now in retrospect, how many years ago did you guys do that? Like make that business decision?
Good question. I think so. I was there from the very beginning, and I left the end of 2023. And I think around after like 2022, maybe. So about two or 3 years ago, that's when
So
the
I
transition
guess
changed.
since then, do you feel like it's still been a good move? Like in retrospect, like, okay, I'm glad we did that, or did it not turn out the way you guys expected, or is it amazing? How does that? Because if you're the first to do it in sports, I feel like it's like uncharted territory
Yeah,
because no one, the NBA hasn't done that, right?
yeah,
And I feel like there's some risk with crypto that people see it as like scammy, right? Now,
yes.
obviously, not all crypto is scammy, but it comes with that.
No, it's legit.
So,
Yeah, what
yeah.
you're saying. Yeah. Look, I think this is a question for them, as I'm not as much involved. When it comes to the actual price of the token, like it's not at the highs right now. I think it was a good move in a way where, like, this business was losing a bunch of money, and then because of this transition, businesses in the crypto world and blockchains were interested to get in, and we opened. So like the people who are following now karate combat are not just the pure martial arts or combat sports lovers, but people in the crypto world because they feel that this is their sport. And yes, there's a bunch of scammy things happening in crypto, but there's a bunch of really good initiatives happening there too. And I think those guys would never watch a fight, or they are not the fans of the UFC, but now they are getting to know karate combat. That's one thing. And the other thing is, it's different in some ways, which is not a problem, right? So like in the very beginning, we felt that this is hard for the people who are only here to enjoy fights because they didn't understand if this was a scam or something along those lines. But I think by now they found the right balance where it's not overwhelming, the crypto part. And time will tell if this was the right move or not. But I think it was a good move to do something differently and attract attention from a different space and also get money from a different space.
So do you own a lot of crypto like yourself, like outside maybe karate combat coins?
I do. I think I understand the space. I'm not a big trader, but I think I know more than most of the people who only know what Bitcoin is, or like they don't know what
Right.
Bitcoin is, but they heard about it, and those
Right.
are the masses. And because I was around founders who are really fanatic about crypto, then you not adapt, but you start to understand these patterns and what they're talking about. It's a whole different language. It's almost the same as you would start learning French or
Yeah.
another.
Japanese or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, which is interesting, and you can get down the rabbit hole, and they have their own Twitter, the crypto Twitter and everything else. So uh, you know I understand it, and I think it has its benefits and the good part, but there's a bunch of scams which are not great things.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you?
Yeah, I lost a bunch of money in crypto.
Welcome,
Well, I
welcome
ended
to
up
the
getting a lot of it
team.
back. So I owned a bunch of money on a bunch of crypto on Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
Voyager, like that big
Yes, I
like
heard
company.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was gonna buy a house, like an investment property, and I was like, oh, well, this has US direct coin that was getting like 6 or 7% interest. And I was like, wait a minute, I could do not I don't have to go find the right property, get tenants, I can just put it in here. Okay, I'm making a little bit less percentage wise, but I have to do nothing. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
cool. So I like pump money in, and one of my friends read a cryptocurrency YouTube channel. So he's super into it. It's all he does every day. And so he kind of got me into it. And I wasn't like I wasn't like being super risky. I mainly owned Bitcoin. I owned Voyager coin because they had like a coin that had like really good interest rate. And I forgot US direct coin and Ethereum. Those are like the big ones I owned. I had like 200K or something. And so basically, like, what I would have put down like a house or something. And I'm like, all right, like this seems pretty good. And like every day making money and it's great. And then one day I wake up, it says Voyager has gone bankrupt and I can't access my account. Right. So if I would have if it would have been, I invested in a coin and it was risky and I lost my money, that would have been fine. So that I made a risk. It's my fault. All good. I wouldn't have made a mistake. But this was not that. It was like a company on the stock exchange that made a bunch of bad decisions. Now I can't access my money. So it was devastating. I was so upset. I was devastated. I was like,
I don't blame you.
And then eventually they went through bankruptcy proceedings. And eventually I ended up getting back, I think like 150 or 160. So it wasn't so bad. I mean, it still lost a bunch of money, but like it wasn't, I didn't lose everything. It took years. It took 2 to 3 years, but eventually I got most of it back. So I thought it was all gone. And I was like, eventually I was like, okay, well, it's all gone. Nothing I can do about it. But yeah, ever since then, I've been very hesitant. Like, I own maybe now $2,000 or something worth of coins because this happens to still be in my Coinbase account. But now I prefer, okay, I just want to invest in things that I actually have control over, which is like business, right? Or like, throw money in advertising for my business instead because I know that's going to have a return if I do it the right way. Do you feel the same way, or do you feel like you still speculative?
I mean, when it comes to the bigger ones like Bitcoin, I think it's gonna stay. So I am keeping some over there, and I'm never selling because that I bought it at a really good time a couple of years ago, and
What'd you get it at?
eight-ish.
18 or 8,000?
No, $8,000.
8,000. Wow, that's a long time ago. When was that?
No, I mean, no, that was, I think, beginning of COVID. There was a time when it went down.
Oh, when it really at the deepest of crash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's great.
But I mean, like I didn't understand, but I could feel that there's something to it when it was around 100. And I wanted to buy, but then technology was just so difficult to get it in some ways. But I don't regret it, but it also gives me another proof that there are patterns and things which I see which can go like really up, or there are things where like I consider myself an early adopter where I feel like, okay, there are certain things which can go really well. And sometimes when it comes to like gambling with any crypto coins or even stocks or something like that, it doesn't work my way. But in things like this with Bitcoin and some other businesses, I do feel success, and I see that those patterns are actually simple.
Yeah. So when you started Karate Combat, did you just recruit all your friends on the training circuit, or how did you get people to actually come do this new thing?
Yeah. So the way I got into Karate Combat, it was 2 guys from Wall Street who had this idea. This was in 2017. And in 2016, that was the year when the UFC got sold for $4 billion. And also in 2016, karate made it to the Olympics for 2020 Tokyo. And they had this idea of like, karate is a huge sport. Everybody knows about karate, but nobody really took it as a brand. And it doesn't have a professional league like the UFC. So that's how they came up with the idea, and then they needed somebody who could first of all execute, but also from the sport, because like none of them came from the sport.
These are just Wall Street guys that approached you?
Just Wall Street guys. Yeah.
How did you know them?
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. How did you know these guys?
They found me because they started talking to fighters, existing fighters. What they looked at is world championship results, who are the best fighters in the world, and try to recruit them for this new league which didn't exist. And I came up on the list, and by this time they already started to talk to a few people who suggested me, because by then I was already retired and I built my businesses around the UFC, and I was doing events in Hungary. And then we just started chatting. They found me, and they didn't know if they wanted to recruit me as a fighter or actually the person for them to run, mostly sports operations, and then go into the space of karate and recruit fighters and to come up with the rule set and the platform where these guys should fight in. And then, yeah, I was their first partner from sport. And as you say, yes, first, like we had a little database, which was an Excel sheet, and put names in there who were like really good fighters and people who I knew and they knew me. And then we just started going after them and signed them without even having one event. And then we did a little test event, not even an event, just we built the pit for the first time ever back in Budapest. This pit is the platform they use at Karate Combat, which is not a ring, not a cage, but a very different signature fighting arena. And we built a prototype of that in Budapest, Hungary in 2017. We invited like 8 fighters who we already had on our roster and under contract, and we just asked them to fight in the headgear and like with big gloves to see how the rule set we created would work. And it was horrible. These guys got like, because so what we wanted to do is to have these world champions and Olympic nominees, or how you would say it, transition to full contact fighting, which is not easy because they are like really, really good at one thing, but full contact fighting is completely different, right? So the whole thing, like in amateur karate, whenever there's a score, they stop the fight. So like they reset and they start again. And even this small detail that these guys, there was no reset, right? But they had to fight until either somebody's knocked out or until 3 minutes is out. This was a huge problem for them because after 1 minute, they were exhausted. And also, we wanted to keep this karate not to be another MMA league. So like we had to come up with a rule set which is interesting enough. We figured that people are bored of the ground exchanges and grappling in MMA. And we just wanted to attract an audience which likes stand-up fighting with a little bit of throwing and sweeps and takedowns in it. So the first thing was horrible. And then we ended up doing, in 2018, a pilot show, also in Hungary, in a big film studio. And we recorded the whole thing, very cinematic, and then released footage of it in April, and it blew up. Like the whole trailer. I mean, like we had Rafael Agaev, who is the GOAT when it comes to karate. He was fighting in there, and the entire karate world, was amazed of what this new thing is. But also we grabbed the attention of the everyday people who were interested in just watching fights. And I think we got over millions and millions of views organically on YouTube just by putting on a trailer. So this wasn't even like a full fight event. It was just something out of a movie.
Wow. Okay. So were you thinking at that point, damn, we made it. This is gonna be enormous, or are you still like worried about it?
I mean, we still didn't produce a live show, which changes a bunch of things, and we still didn't have a real concept of like how this looks as a yearly schedule, how many shows we will, like we had something in mind, but then also you start burning money on a pace which is hard to to keep on.
Were you raising money on your own at this point, or you guys did the Wall Street guys fund it, or were you putting in your own money at this point? Like, because obviously it's expensive to start, right?
Yes, it's very expensive to start, especially if you have international fighters who now you have to travel around the world, hotels, and then fight purse and all of the things what you would have in the fight world with an event. It was one of these guys, the crypto guy, who started putting in the money, and there was no official fundraiser or anything. There was a bunch of friends and family, so like a small round of people who put in some money. But at that time, you were just kind of losing money. But at the first year, that was anticipated. So like that was to be expected. But after the second and the third year, we still did the shows and we didn't generate any money. That's where the problems start to come, because like, okay, do you keep on going? Like, what do you need to do differently to stand out? And the one thing we did well from the beginning is building our social media presence and the content we created around the fights, because I think we understood that fights are really important, but where the world is heading is the content is just as much important as a good fight. And also the way people consume content completely changed from where it was in 2018, then now we're at 2022. So we came up with the idea of doing, and this was also during COVID when everything was shut down, to do virtual environments. So again, we were back in Budapest, everything is locked down, but we managed to put on a few shows, non-live, live-to-tape shows, and build these huge green screen studios where we would record the fights, and in post-production we would put these crazy backgrounds in the fights, and then live to tape, giving it to distribution partners. And we thought that this is going to be the big deal, but the problem was that you're kind of promoting a sport which is not live, which people are not really excited about. And it was also a big problem for us because we had all these fighters, but we had to embargo all the content. People who were on site couldn't post about it. So, you took a big part of the experience away. But for sure, the end product was very high production value, but we were not very happy with not being able to do this live. And then we transitioned, and that's when I moved to the US, when we started doing shows over here in Orlando and in Miami, because the technology were at a point where we could do these virtual environments live. So like we didn't have to post-produce everything after the fact we taped it, and we did it with huge LED screens and also mapping the VFX and everything. And it turned out that was a tipping point of getting attention around the whole thing, because these knockouts created millions and millions of views on social media. And then at the same time, we also pivoted to the crypto part, where we could have a huge sponsor sign up for like 3 years with us, which got us out of trouble. And then all of these other people came in. And also that was a time when we pivoted to crypto, when we did a big fundraise, and we got 21 million through the whole transitioning to a crypto-based platform, which got us moving.
Yeah. So when you raise the money, like what's like a burn per year for Karate Combat? Like how much are you actually spending per year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm allowed to go into specifics, but I can tell you in general that it's when you put on these international shows or shows in the US specifically, it can get very expensive, and especially if you want to put on high production value. So you're not just buying the cheapest flight pack or the worst truck you can for the live broadcast. So it is deep into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and depending on the fight card you put together and the sell or the purse of the fighters, this can go up in between $1 million or $2 million, depending on who fights and where the event is happening. So I think the burn rate is big, but like when we got these pitches for the investors, we already kind of understood like what one show would cost us, and then build out the year or the next 2-3 years.
Did you have anyone that you could like that could mentor you? Maybe someone who was a UFC executive or WWE executive, someone who's kind of been through these live productions launching a sport, or you guys just figuring it out on your own as you went along?
I think as stupid as we were, like we kind of figured things out on our own. And, like we had people come in and out, but like the core team, which I was part of for like 6 years, didn't really change that much. And we didn't have, so although we spent a bunch of money on events, we didn't hire like these big executive producers who came from the WWE or like other big brands, because we just didn't have the money to do that, because we rather spent it on events rather than reoccurring monthly salaries or retainers. So I think in some ways it made sense. In some ways, maybe we burned through some money with our mistakes. And, there are a bunch of things where what you can do cheaper and get the same results, which we only learned throughout the process. Recently, I have launched another league called Dirty Boxing Championship, and I could put together a show for way cheaper than what we did before with the experience I had for a couple of years with Karate Combat.
So that's your new venture now, is Dirty Boxing?
One sec. Let me just, sorry, I'm back.
That's all good. So is that your new venture now, Dirty Boxing?
No, I last year in 2024, this is what I was working on and my team, and our assignment ended at the end of the year. So we were part of the whole process of from how you take an idea to an actual product and how you launch a very new professional fighting league by creating the concept, the ring, the rule set, the branding, and put on the first show, which we did in November. I'm not involved anymore because I have my own company now where we do stuff like this, where we help others put on new products. And again, what I said is everybody's got great ideas, but putting them together and executing on them and to create something which could be a long-term business, sometimes that's the hard part.
Yeah, I agree. So is that why you started the business that you have now? Is because someone else hired you? 30 Boxing hired you to kind of help with their branding and launch, and then you're like, oh, I should actually just do this. Is the part I'm really good at.
I think so, yes. And also, before I started working with Karate Combat back in 2018, I had my own businesses. I still have a media business back in Hungary. It's an online magazine around the UFC, which is the market leader over there. We also built an apparel business based on the community, what we had on the people and the community around the online magazine. A bunch of other small ventures and businesses, and then I started working together and partnering with people. And the last 7 years was very stressful, not just because this is a very stressful business, but also, there is always too many chefs in the kitchen. There's always people with different ideas, and sometimes you clash. And I just found that a bunch of things what I did as a job, I want to do it as a business. That's one thing. And a bunch of things what I've seen and experienced in the last 7 years running these promotions, I felt that were missing, or like we had to work with outside agencies who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. Not because they were bad, it's just like the fight business is very different niche from everything else. And just because you're a marketing agency, that doesn't mean that it applies to every business. And also understanding how we build these, like with Karate Combat, it's over 6 million followers across different platforms in a few years. With Dirty Boxing, we got to 100,000 followers only on Instagram in 5 months. And we got our first event, got over 30 million views in 2 weeks on Instagram. So we kind of understand how to make it go viral, how to make it pop, how to make it for the highlight generation where you've got 2 seconds of attention span of people, and you've got to provide them something where they like it and they feel it's different and it's not like a UFC junior. And I felt that this is something where we can provide value. And I just want to do that with my team on my own.
Very cool. So is that why you left Karate Combat? There's like too many chefs in the kitchen, and you just wanted to make that part of your job into a career, and to why exactly did you decide to move on?
No, I mean, Karate Combat was back in 2023. It was, I was there for 6 years. So it was a mixture of burnout. It was a mixture of not getting along with the partners because we had some things which we didn't align on. They thought it was time. I thought it was time. So, and it's they wanted to change more and to go to the mainstream. I'm very old school in a way where martial arts and karate was, I always had my principles around that, and there were a bunch of things which they wanted to move to, which wasn't aligned with what I wanted to do. So that's why we parted ways back in 2023. But I always had during these 6 years, I always had I was an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur, although I was part of a bigger system. So I always had it in me, and it bugged me all the time because sometimes I feel that I can do it better, or I'm right.
Right.
And when you're not you always have either partners or investors or clients, so you always end up with this thing. But also for me, it was too much that I just couldn't do it my way. And sometimes other ways are better than your ways, so like that's great, but sometimes it's just like something you're not aligned with, and then it's just time to do something else.
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. Was it hard to leave because it was like your identity? If you could be there for 6 years, karate combat becomes your identity, right? So everyone
Yes.
thinks about you. So was that hard? Was that hard, like, to leave that?
Yes, I mean, it was hard, and also, it was not very pretty the way we separated, and it was my baby, from day one, and I'm a karate guy since I was 9 years old. I'm 44 now, but it's deep in me, and I wanted to provide something to the world and the community of karate. It was hard, 6 years is a long time. I had many great memories and friends and people who I worked with the team, which were great. A bunch of negative experiences as well. A lot of things what I'm very thankful for, what I learned throughout the whole process. But yeah, I would be lying if I would say it wasn't hard in the beginning for a couple of months. Again, it's in some ways I look at things as when I was fighting, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You learn the most after your losses, and sometimes a loss is more painful than the others, and it takes just more time to recover and then to move on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn, essentially, right?
Yes.
And like, for me, I right out of college, I joined my martial arts professionally. I launched a school out of college while I was a senior in college, and my brother already had like around a dozen schools at that point. So I joined on, and I did it for about 10 years. And about a little less than a year ago, I decided, like, hey, I'm going to move on. I'm going to go. I had three schools. One of them I sold in order to help me kind of move, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the hardest part of it was not like the financial risk or even moving. It was more the identity, because like this is my brother's franchise. Like, he's the one that started. I joined on later, and there's like family and emotions involved, and how people see me as the karate guy who runs a school. So I think eventually it fades away and it's fine. Now it's all good, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to focus completely on helping other martial arts schools grow their martial arts school organically, like without ads. Like, how do they set up a strategic partnership with their local education system, like their local public and private schools, so that way they can grow that way without having to rely on ads all the time, because that's what most of them do. And I had been doing it for about 2.5 years, but like, it wasn't my full-time thing. I was also running schools. So like, until you make that jump and leap, you'll never really know. And I was like, okay, if I fail, I fail. But now I'm super happy I did it, but the hard part was the identity shift. Like by far the hardest part.
It all comes down to ego in some ways,
For
which is
sure.
and that's the hard part, especially if also in my case I was the face of the league, and all of a sudden I'm not there, which was part of my identity, like and also in your case it's like it's hard. I think if you're like me, you always envisioned it, or like you had it like what would happen after, and it was already like a bad feeling of like, yeah, but like you're gonna get over it. When it happens, sometimes it's not as bad, right, as you had it in your mind before, or it could be sometimes worse, because it is happening, you're making the shift. So but yeah, I found through the whole process you learn so much about yourself, that I think at the end of the day you can be thankful of things like this happening, because you know yourself better, you know the people who are with you and who are not at the worst times, or like the times when things are getting difficult, and it's ego. And the more you can, I don't think you have to let it completely go, because ego can be a really fuel for a bunch of things and motivation for something else, but just like have to balance it in a way where it's not too much, and you also understand like, okay, like why do I feel this pain? Is it because of my ego, because of my identity, what I thought was my identity? And that's what I mentioned. It's a process of like, okay, as you said, time passed, and these things just balance out.
Yeah, I would say initially it was like shock, like
Uh-huh.
at least leading up to it. The hardest part is leading up to it. But then once it happens, right? And I sold my school and I moved, then it's like relief. It's like, oh,
Yes.
thank God. Right. But it's all the lead up that's the hard part. Right. And like, here's the thing, it wasn't like a negative situation. Like my brother was very supportive,
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily like the cleanest look for the younger brother of the organization to be leaving, right? So it's not, once again, it wasn't negative, but it was like it's not great for him to have the young guy who has a couple schools that's like influential in the organization leave. Like it's not good for him. So I don't want to, but like he still handled it with like very much grace and helped me kind of move on.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God I have that. We had some intermediaries too that kind of helped us, so we didn't like act so
Yeah.
emotional. And then we have great. We never hurt our personal relationship, which is like really hard to do when you have a
Yes.
business partner, right? Because I'm sure some of the people you started it with were like brothers, and then when you leave, it can kind of sour it, right?
Yeah.
And that part sucks. Like you always hurt the people the most that you love the most, right?
Yeah.
So luckily, it didn't turn out that it wasn't that bad for me because I really didn't want to hurt my family, like my mom and my dad. Like I didn't want that to happen, right?
Sure.
So I guess like my only other question is like, okay, so now you're helping other fight promotions, other fighters. For people who are listening, by the way, and they want to follow you, like well, I'm not ready to wrap up yet, but like if someone wants to follow you, how do they even find you?
So on social media, I go as Adam_S Kovacs. That's Instagram is probably the one I use the most, but I use X as well, and LinkedIn a little bit. I have my website called Kovacs Experience, which is the company I run called Kovacs Entertainment. And I think those are the places where they can find me. But I'm pretty known within the industry. I believe throughout these years, I was lucky enough to meet a bunch of superstars within the space, a bunch of influential people. And I wasn't very vocal about the whole pivot and the way but we already get traction and people are reaching out because they want to work with us, which is really great, because I think you can brag all they want on social media that how great you are, but I think it's really through your work, when you work together with people, and the word of mouth, when people and some trust starts to build. And I do experience that I get along really well with a bunch of people. Some people I don't, as I think this is normal. But the people I worked together in the past putting on shows, we always had a great rapport and relationship, and we always enjoyed working together with each other. So now when they know that I'm doing other things, and especially for fighters, and I think I feel their pain points, understanding of like, okay, what they struggle with. And this is not the training part, right? Because that's already a struggle. But everything else of like how they build their brand, how they use social media for their purposes, which could be, they just want followers. It could be they want more fights. It could be they want to get into another fight promotion or any fight promotion, or they just want sponsorship. So there's so many levels to like what they need and what they need to do to accomplish that there's not too many people who understand it from the both sides. And talking with them with strategy, and then soon providing them with platforms with today's technology, with AI and automation, I think we'll be able to help them grow their presence, their brand, their whatever they want to grow at. And the same thing applies for promotions, because we did it ourselves for 7 years. We know what works, what doesn't work. And we did it for ourselves for a long time, but now we're going to help others. And the one thing I found, and I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that there's no digital agency and consultation and brand building specifically for the fight game. I mean, when you say what you're doing is very specific to the dojos, when there are specific CRMs for gyms and martial arts schools, So that is something, people already do, but I feel there are no marketing or digital agencies who can actually understand the fight game as we do. And I feel that, it's a great way to tap into that and provide a ton of value while building an actual business and not just doing a job.
So who do you want to come to you? Is it fighters or fight promoters or leagues or all the above?
I think I like the most, where I feel we can help the most is fighters and fight promotions, because like I never ran my own gym, so I think I could do a decent job of getting a gym, a landing page, get them some SEO, do some social media content management for them, but I don't feel that I like really am an expert in that. But I feel like that with building a fight promotion and every element of it, from regulations to matchmaking to fight operations to all the other stuff, building a brand, having a new rule set and getting it licensed in different states, and all of that is a skill which is rare, because everybody who's got it, they are doing their own stuff. There are a lot of people who want to move into the fight game, but they don't know how to. They don't have the experience, but they might have the resources when it comes to money. And when it comes to the fighters, they have managers who are trying to get them fights, but nobody's really taking care of their other stuff in a way where it's good for them. And what I mean by that, not good, but easy for them. That's the right word. Because what we found, based on the communications we have with fighters and managers and everybody else, that they are hard workers when it comes to the gym. They are hard workers when it comes to an event, and they are actually fighting for their lives. But sometimes they have a hard time of using other platforms and systems and processes, because that's not what they do. That's not what they need to do. And what I mean by that, for example, is they don't write emails, right? They don't like to sign up to things. They don't want to go on a platform to upload their videos and then spend 4 hours editing with CapCut or whatever platform. So like, why not help them do that through the platforms they already use? And this is what we're working on, because we also understand that these fighters don't have a lot of money. It's not like, okay, you start an agency and then you have these high ticket clients. Fighters don't have money, but they still spend money on these things, sometimes hiring an editor or spending 4 hours on doing something where they could train. And we're coming up with a platform and either a subscription based model where it's a no-brainer for them to get on board and let us help them just focus on what they're good at, which is training and competing. And this is something we want to do globally, not just in the US, and not only for fighters who are actually pro fighters, but anybody who steps in one of your dojos or the people you help with, because they also have an Instagram account, and they would also be happy if they didn't have to use their brain power to think what my next post should be and how I should put it together. So I think that's where I think that the market is huge, and we're finding ways to help them.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you so much for coming on here. And if anyone is interested in growing their school organically, you can find me, Matthew, at wdojo.com, or you can find Adam at Adam underscore SKOVACS on Instagram. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, find him on there, send him a DM. If you're a fighter or a fight promotion, you want to build your presence, find someone who's already done it and has been through it for almost a decade. That way you can shortcut your way to success, and instead of going through all the trials and errors on your own, just shortcut it. Thank you guys for listening. Bye,
Thank you. And also before we go, so
Yeah.
like I had this long-winded of like what we do, but what are your thoughts on what I just said in that regard?
About what you do? And what exactly thoughts are you looking for?
I'm looking for like based on your experience with your businesses and the people you talk to, as it could be martial artists or people from the space, is this something that they could really this is value for them, or this is something where you think is missing?
For fighters, I don't know that world. I'm not like, and we don't train competitive fighters. So it's not what we do. So that I don't know. I mean, if they don't have a lot of money, I think it's hard to sell. I think it'd be difficult. Like if they don't have a lot of money already, like, okay, well then how are they going to invest in this thing that's going to help their branding? But you might be able to get like mid-level fighters, right? So maybe that's who you're going after, not the people who have no money, but people who already have somewhat of a reputation. But B, also like in terms of fight promotions, also not my world at all. Like, I don't know, there are a lot of fight promoters out there that like, because I feel like fight promoting is also very ego driven sport. Everyone's like, this is my territory, my fighters, I'm going to do it my way. So I'm not sure how many of those people are looking for help and support, but maybe there is out there. I honestly just don't know that market. I feel like the more like, I don't know if it was me, like how I started out like coaching other people is, well, first I taught everyone in our franchise how to do it, right? We have 30 plus schools. So I taught them how to do it. And then how to do the organic marketing. And then I took on a couple of clients for free where I didn't charge them anything. And I helped them grow their schools. And then I got some case studies, some testimonials. And then once I had those testimonials, case studies, then I started to charge for it. Right. So I feel like you can do the same thing. I mean, you have the reputation in the community, which is great. I think if you're a little bit more specific, exactly how you're going to grow it, and like, okay, I'm going to we work on growing your Instagram by doing this strategy in order to get to this, blah, blah, blah. I think if you're a little more specific, a little less generic, I'll understand it more. And I think other people understand it more and they'll gravitate towards it. But you have a huge market and a big following. So
I think the way I would explain this to you, we have somebody who's doing 3 accounts for fight promotions and already doing their social media. But there's no way he can scale to 10 or 20, right? Unless he's starting a business around this and have other people help him. Although even the 3 account, most of the things are happening with AI and automation. And that's where we come in of like, okay, we're able to not just do it for 3 account, but to do it for 10 or 15 or 100, if it makes sense. And then the same with the fighters, we sat down and we're thinking about, okay, what the fighters need for this to happen. And then we came up with something where it was not scalable. Not just because they don't have the money, but you need a photographer, a videographer all the time with you who is creating this content, and then the editors and everything else. But then we found a way where we could do packages which are really helpful for fighters, which is, a landing page, a strategy, and a couple of posts per week or per month, where now it is scalable because you can do it not only for 10 fighters, but you could also do it with 1,000 with the way once we understand what their real needs are. So that's how we're thinking of both the fighters and the fight promotions. I agree 100% that, most of the fight promotions already figured it out on their own on how to do the actual operations and a bunch of other stuff. But when it comes to content, they will all do step and repeat, and they still need a marketing agency to do the stuff for them. But it's not fight specific, so they don't understand. So that's how we would, tap into the industry understanding from the inside.
Who do they use now?
They just whatever
marketing agency,
marketing agency, or like whoever is local or a friend of the friend or somebody else. With Karate Combat, we paid a bunch of money to a marketing agency who once worked with the UFC, because everybody wants to work with the UFC or the WWE or some other big client. And, I was sitting there with them every single week when, I had to brainstorm, but not just brainstorm, but come up with the ideas, which they had absolutely no idea because they were not from the space. And for that, I mean, there are hundreds of fight promotions in the US and outside globally who need this kind of service. And they, sometimes they do use these services, just those people don't know what they're doing. And not because they are bad, it's just because they are not in the niche. And they're also, as you said, they're very generic about what they do. We do websites, we do SEO, and we do paid ads. We're good at this. And whoever comes in, it doesn't matter if it's a martial arts school, a fight promotion, or a lumber, we can do it all. But I think the fight world is very specific on what you're trying to communicate and how to reach different audiences.
I mean, you're right. Also, like, if you want to hire an agency and you're a fighter, I'd rather hire someone that does that for fighters, not just some generic. I mean, we have people run our Facebook ads for our schools. We use not a generic marketing agency. We use a martial arts marketing agency.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, the only good thing about it, not the only good thing, one of the good things is that your market is so defined. So, like, why not just find these promoters of these leagues? Because there's not that many of them. Okay, maybe there's 500 in the U.S. I don't know how many are in the U.S. 1,000? I have no idea. Find their accounts and be like, hey, I looked at your account. Here's what I saw. Here's what can be improved. If you did this, this is what we did for Karate Combat, or this is what I did working with Karate Combat. You'll be able to get to this. And I give them like a free audit and just, and because you can find it all online anyway. And if the more genuine you are giving away that free stuff, like right away, the more they're like, oh, I'm going to want you in Ichigo. It's the same reason I do this podcast, right? I mean, like, people hear me, they like me, they trust me when they hear me, or they hate me and my voice, and then I screw this guy, they'll never work with me. But a lot of people, when they come on board, I know if they listen to my podcast, and they're more likely to be like, oh yeah, I already know what you're about. Sounds good. How do I sign up? Versus someone who knows nothing, and I try to sell them, and it's like, well, who are you again? Like, tell me about you. And it's just, it's not as good, right?
Yes, so I agree 100%. By the way, so, until now, people come to us now that they know which direction we're heading. And also, before with the fight promotion stuff, they come to us. So like we didn't really have to go out and generate leads and then go after and then give them a free, strategy or give them things of that sort of like a small audit for free, which we're very lucky. And this is based on the experiences and the relationships we had so far. But we're definitely trying to get our word out there in a way where people are still come and want to work with us, and we don't have to go for each and every promotion to do this for them. But eventually, we want to balance it out where like people are coming to us, and we also look for new clients that way.
Yeah, I mean, just like anything else, you got to run ads, but you also hope to get organically people like word of mouth, right? I mean, I think you already have a reputation and a following. I feel like for you, it's not going to be that difficult. It's just going to be about getting really good results for their first couple of clients and then blasting those results over and over and over again. Like, so for me coaching, and anyone who's listening to this, like, they'll understand, like, okay, when I first start coaching other martial arts schools how to grow organically, and I'm new, I look like an idiot online because no one knows. Now I'm like doing something different. They're like, stay in your lane, right? You should be just run your karate school. So, and then, okay, and that sucks, but everything I produce is terrible because I'm new at it. And I still feel like I'm new at it. But I know that I have a really good system. At least that part I know is good. And then, but in the beginning, like, the only people that reach out to me are people who, I run a karate school in my garage, right? Or, I do it part-time when I'm a teacher, right?
And like, they're qualifying like leads, really.
Yeah, right? And they're bad leads, and like they're reaching out to me though, which is nice, but like not great quality. And then it starts to step up. Okay, now we do $10,000 a month in revenue, and now the martial arts school that comes to me, and now it's like, okay, now my clients do, like, I have clients that do $100,000 a month in their karate school, right? Like multiple clients that do that. I had a client that had 50 plus schools. So the higher quality client I get, the better they are at actually following through on the strategies I give them. So they actually get better results because they're more seasoned business people. And B, it gives me better case studies, better testimonials. Like, hey, if this guy's doing it, you should be doing it. It's not just it shouldn't be just the poor fighter who needs help with their social media. It should be the person who's like mid range and like wants to get to the higher level, right? So I feel like over time you're just going to be able to build that way, and that's what I feel like for me. And it's, oh my god, it's so much better working with a client who already does $50,000 a month versus a client who does 10 and they struggle with everything and need our handheld for everything, and it's just hard to work with, right? So not that those people don't need help, like they should get help, and I'm happy to help them. It's just more difficult. right? So yeah, I feel like you're going to be able to do the same thing.
Cool.
Is that helpful or not helpful?
No, absolutely. No, very, very helpful. And thank you for it. For the low, not low tier, but I would say for the masses, we're just trying to figure out a way which is almost like a SaaS, a software, rather than us having to do either a sales pitch or anything in between.
So you want to build a software?
Or yes.
Okay.
It's something which is more on the back end. It is a software where, depending on like what the needs are, it creates the solutions. And I think
okay, well, that's a whole different other business. Now you're talking a SaaS business, not a service business. I mean, yeah, not just a regular service business. That's like a whole other thing, right? Like, have you built software like that before?
I mean, like we did build some software for karate combat with the app we had, but I think what I'm talking about is more using already existing softwares.
Yeah. Putting some tools together
For this purpose.
Yeah.
So like on the front end, nothing is happening other than WhatsApp messages and Instagram DMs, where somebody just sends us a video of a fight footage. And then at the back end, everything happens automatically when it comes to editing and captions and everything else.
Yeah.
There will be human supervision, but other than that, everything is through the softwares.
Yeah, I mean, that's great if you can make it work. All editing software I've used where it's like AI has not worked for me that well. Maybe I just suck at it. I don't know. But whenever it's like I've used Opus Clips or, whatever, 3 or 4 other ones I've tried, they're never really good. Like, yeah, it makes a clip, but they're not good. They don't start with the hook. They don't have like, it's boring information. So I feel like that's probably gonna get better at time, and maybe you get better at it and you can train it how to do it better. But for me, it didn't work that well. But I'm sure it's got to get better over time. And then obviously, if you could leverage that to a lot of people, I just feel like there's not that many fighters, not that many people that have fight promotions. So it's like a pretty limited market. But maybe there's more than I think. I don't really know. Like, I'm not in that world. Truly.
We'll see. But you're right, and these are the questions we're having. And in the meantime, I'm like, we do have new clients coming in, and people they want to do shows in Miami, and they want existing promotions who are like not US promotions, but they want to step their foot into the US market. But at the same time, I feel like we want to do something for the fighters and not just for businesses outside of the fighters. And I think, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are training, and if there's a way we could help them specifically with these things, that would be great.
Yeah, I hope you can. Hope you figure it out. I'm gonna stay tuned into what you're doing. And if you ever want to talk business or bounce an idea off someone who's in the martial arts business, who's not directly in that avenue, sometimes it's helpful, right? Like, I'd be happy to ask you questions too, because I don't know anything about event production. Not that that's what I want to go into. I don't have any interest in that, but like, it's a different branch of the same tree, right?
Yeah.
So
I agree.
All right, Adam. Thank you so much. We'll stay connected. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Have a good one.